The emergency broadcast came without warning. Every screen across human space suddenly went dark, then filled with the image of a creature humanity had never seen before. She looked like living crystal, her body made of transparent geometric shapes that shifted colors as she moved. Her name was Ambassador Velnara, and she was terrified. "People of Earth," she began, her voice translated into every human language simultaneously. "We are the Galactic Council. We represent 43 civilizations across this region of space. We have avoided contact with your species because your world frightens us. But now we have no choice. We need your help." The message played in homes, on stations, and colony ships across a dozen star systems. Humanity stopped and listened. Velnara explained that an enemy had emerged from the dark spaces between stars. They called themselves the Kreshtar Swarm. They were not like anything the Council had faced before. The swarm consumed everything. They ate planets, stripped them of all resources, absorbed all life. Entire civilizations had vanished in weeks. The Council's fleets were in full retreat. "We studied your planet when we first detected your radio signals," Velnara continued. "We classified Earth as a Class 12 death world. This is the highest danger rating in our system. Your gravity would crush most of our species. Your weather patterns would be considered natural disasters on our worlds. Your oceans are filled with creatures that hunt and kill. Your land is covered in predators. Even your plants are often poisonous or carnivorous." She paused, and for a moment humanity saw something they understood in her crystalline features. Fear. "We thought you were primitives, barbarians from a nightmare planet. We were wrong. You survived Earth, you thrived on it. You built civilization in one of the most hostile environments we have ever documented. And now we need that strength. We need warriors. We need Deathworlders." The United Earth Council convened within the hour. Representatives from every nation and colony gathered in virtual space. The debate was short. "They ignored us for decades," said one representative. "Called us primitives. Now they want our help." Fleet Admiral Kenji Nakamura stood. He was 73 years old with gray hair and scars from the colony wars. "They're right to be afraid of us," he said quietly. "We come from a world that tried to kill us every single day. We fought ice ages, plagues, asteroid impacts. We fought each other. We nearly destroyed ourselves a dozen times. But we're still here. We learned how to survive." He pulled up a holographic display showing the swarm's advance. Red markers indicated fallen civilizations. The pattern was clear. The swarm was spreading fast. "These people are dying," Nakamura continued. "They asked for help. That's all I need to know." The vote was unanimous. Humanity would answer the call. The order went out across all human space. Release the fleet. Those 3 words meant everything. For 2 centuries, humanity had built ships for war, not because they wanted to fight, but because they knew their own history. Humans fought. It was what they did. So they built ships that could survive anything, weapons that could destroy anything, and trained soldiers who could fight anywhere. Now those ships powered up from orbital docks. The UESS Valiant, flagship of the First Fleet, was a massive fortress in space. Its hull was layered with reactive armor, redundant systems, and weapons platforms. It looked nothing like the elegant vessels the Council built. It looked like exactly what it was: a ship designed by a species that learned warfare before they learned peace. Admiral Nakamura stood on the bridge, watching as other ships joined formation. Battlecruisers, destroyers, carriers, each one bristling with weapons. Around them smaller ships darted like sharks. Fighters, dropships, assault boats. "Sir, the Marine divisions are boarding now," reported his executive officer, Commander Lisa Torres. "We'll have 20,000 troops ready for deployment within 6 hours." Nakamura nodded. Human Marines were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They were enhanced with cybernetics, trained in gravity 3 times Earth normal, and equipped with powered armor that let them fight in any environment. Vacuum, radiation, toxic atmospheres, it did not matter. If you could drop a Marine there, they could fight there. "What about the volunteers?" Nakamura asked. Torres smiled slightly. "Sir, everyone volunteered. We had to turn people away. That was humanity in a single sentence. When the call came, everyone wanted to answer. Across the fleet, soldiers prepared. Sergeant Jake Morrison checked his armor for the 100th time. He was 32, built like a tank with augmented muscles and reflexes enhanced by neural implants. He had fought in the colony wars, survived 3 0G combat drops, and led his squad through situations that should have killed them all. "You think these aliens are tough?" asked Private Chen, a young woman on her first deployment. Morrison sealed his helmet and grinned. Doesn't matter. We're tougher. In the science division, Captain Sarah Chen reviewed everything humanity knew about the swarm. It was not much. They were biological ships, grown rather than built. They adapted quickly to weapons. They showed no interest in communication. They just consumed and moved on. But Sarah noticed something. The swarm had rolled over every council species without much resistance. The council species were peaceful. They had known 10,000 years without major wars. They built beautiful ships for exploration and trade. They had no concept of things like boarding actions, ramming attacks, or fighting to the last man. They've never fought predators, Sarah muttered to herself. They've only fought other prey. The fleet finished assembly in 3 days. 48 capital ships, 200 escort vessels, and 500 fighters. It was not humanity's entire fleet, but it was enough to make a statement. Admiral Nakamura gave the order, and the fleet jumped to faster-than-light speed. They were going to war. When they arrived at the refuge system where the Council made their last stand, the aliens got their first look at a human battle fleet. The contrast was immediate and shocking. Council ships were works of art, smooth curves, elegant lines built for efficiency and beauty. They glided through space like dancers. Human ships were brutal, angular, armored, covered in weapons. They moved through space like predators, all purpose and power. The Council's supreme commander, Strategos Telvan, was a Vorley, an amphibious being with smooth blue skin and large black eyes. He watched the human fleet arrive with a mixture of relief and terror. They look like weapons themselves, he whispered to his aide. That's because they are, sir, the aide replied. Ambassador Velnara greeted Admiral Nakamura via hologram. Admiral, thank you for coming. We have prepared docking facilities and quarters for your crews. Appreciated, Ambassador, Nakamura replied. But we'll stay on our ships. We're not here for shore leave. Where's the enemy? Telvan joined the conversation, bringing up tactical displays. The swarm has 3 major fleets converging on this system. Our projections give us 3 months before they arrive in force. We are preparing evacuation protocols. Nakamura studied the displays. You're running. We're preserving what we can, Telvan said carefully. No, Nakamura said flatly. We're staying. We're fighting, and we're going to win. The council representatives exchanged glances. They did not understand. This was how wars were fought. You retreated, you preserved your forces, you waited for better opportunities. But humans did not fight that way. Humans believed in holding the line. They believed in last stands. They believed that some things were worth dying for. Admiral, Velnara said gently, we appreciate your courage, but the swarm has defeated our best fleets. They adapt to every weapon we use. We've run probability simulations. The chance of successfully defending the system is less than 15%. Admiral Nakamura smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Ambassador, humanity once landed 12 men on a beach against 50,000 entrenched soldiers. We've held bridges against armies. We've defended stations against fleets. We've won battles that every computer said were impossible. 15%? He laughed. We've won with worse odds. Now tell me where these bastards are and let's go introduce them to Earth's children. The Council did not understand then, but they would learn. The Deathworlders had arrived and everything was about to change. The swarm came on the 3rd day. Council sensors detected them first. A scout force. 50 bioships moving at incredible speed toward the refuge system's outer perimeter. The Council fleet immediately began their retreat protocol, pulling back to defensive positions. The human fleet did the opposite. They accelerated forward. Admiral, the Council forces are withdrawing, Commander Torres reported. Let them, Nakamura said. We'll handle this. He opened a channel to the entire fleet. All ships, this is Nakamura. The enemy is here. Time to show them what Deathworlders can do. Weapons free. Engage at will. The human fleet split into 3 groups, moving to intercept the swarm from different angles. On the Council command station, Strategos Telvan watched in horror. They're going to be surrounded, he said. No, said his tactical officer, a Kelthara named Zixthar. His insectoid body trembled as he studied the display. They're hunting. The swarm bioships were alive, massive creatures grown in the void. They had no metal hulls, no engines as the Council understood them. They were organic vessels that moved through space using biological processes humanity did not yet understand. They were fast, adaptive, and until now unstoppable. They met the human fleet at the edge of the system. The first human weapons to fire were railguns. Solid metal slugs accelerated to incredible speeds, pure kinetic energy. The swarm had adapted to energy weapons by growing reflective hides. But you could not reflect a chunk of metal moving at a significant fraction of light speed. The rounds punched through swarm bioships like they were paper. Atmosphere and biological matter explosively decompressed into space. But the swarm adapted. The remaining ships began weaving using evasive maneuvers. They closed the distance, trying to use their own weapons, acid sprays and biological missiles that had destroyed Council ships. The human destroyers opened up with point defense systems, computer-targeted guns that shot down incoming projectiles. What got through hit reactive armor that exploded outward, neutralizing the acid before it could eat through the hull. Then the human ships did something the swarm had never encountered before. They charged forward at full speed, closing to point-blank range. In space combat, this was insane. Ships were supposed to keep distance, use long-range weapons, preserve themselves. But humans did not fight that way. The UESS Indomitable, a battle cruiser, rammed directly into a swarm bioship. The impact should have destroyed both vessels. But the Indomitable's reinforced prow was designed for exactly this. The bioship's hide ruptured, and before it could seal the breach, armored pods launched from the Indomitable. Boarding teams away, the ship's captain reported calmly. On the Council command station, every alien present went silent. Boarding? They were boarding the enemy ships? Inside the swarm vessel, Sergeant Morrison's squad moved fast. Their armor was airtight, temperature-controlled, and equipped with weapons designed for close quarters. The interior of the bioship was like being inside a living creature. Walls pulsed, the floor was slick with organic matter, and the air, what there was of it, was toxic. "Spread out," Morrison ordered. "Find the command node." They moved through the corridors, weapons ready. The swarm tried to defend itself, growing warrior forms from its own mass, but the creatures were designed to fight other bioships in space, not armored soldiers in tight corridors. Morrison's squad cut them down with calculated efficiency. Plasma rifles, explosive rounds, whatever worked. They fought their way to the central node, a massive pulsing mass of neural tissue. Plant charges, Morrison said. They set antimatter charges with 3-minute timers and fought their way back to their entry point. The Indomitable pulled the boarding pods back just as the charges detonated. The entire bioship exploded from the inside. In space, the human fleet continued their assault. They did not retreat when damaged. They did not fall back to regroup. They pressed forward relentlessly. Human pilots flew their fighters in patterns that pulled 12, 15, even 18 Gs. Their bodies were cushioned by gel suspension seats and supported by stimulants that would kill most species. But they kept flying, kept shooting, kept killing. The Council watched in stunned silence as the human fleet destroyed the entire swarm scout force in 47 minutes. Not a single swarm ship escaped, but the human fleet had paid a price. 5 destroyers were heavily damaged, 3 fighters were lost, 73 human casualties. When Admiral Nakamura reported to the Council, Strategos Telvan struggled to find words. You rammed them. You boarded them. You fought inside their ships. Standard tactics, Nakamura said. Sometimes you need to get close. But your casualties, Velnara said softly. 73 dead in less than an hour. Nakamura's expression hardened. And how many Council species died in the last month? Millions, billions? We lost 73 people to save this system. That's a trade I'll make every time. The Council did not know how to respond. They had calculated acceptable losses in percentages and strategic value. Humans calculated them in individual lives and mission success. Captain Sarah Chen studied the remains of the destroyed bioships. She had sample collectors retrieve biomass for analysis. What she found fascinated and horrified her. They're adaptive, she explained to Admiral Nakamura. The swarm learns from every encounter. These ships had already started developing thicker hides where our railguns hit them. If we'd fought longer, they would have adapted to our weapons. So we don't fight longer, Nakamura said. We hit hard, hit fast, and kill them before they can adapt. That's going to cost us, Sarah warned. Everything costs, Nakamura replied. The question is whether we're willing to pay. Over the next week, the swarm sent more scouts. Each time the human fleet intercepted and destroyed them. Each time they learned more about the enemy. And each time the swarm adapted a little more. The council species began to understand what they had brought into their war. Humans fought with a brutality they had never imagined. But more than that, humans understood something the council had forgotten over 10,000 years of peace. War was not about technology or tactics alone. War was about will. It was about being willing to face death and keep fighting. It was about looking at impossible odds and charging forward anyway. The Kelthera Queen requested a meeting with human officers. She wanted to understand how they fought. Commander Torres and Sergeant Morrison represented the military perspective, while Captain Chen provided scientific analysis. "Your soldiers," the Queen began, her insectoid mandibles clicking nervously. "They fight in conditions that would kill my people in seconds. Vacuum, radiation, toxic atmospheres, how?" "Training and technology," Torres explained. "But mostly it's mindset. Our planet tried to kill us for millions of years. We learned to fight back. We learned to survive anywhere. But the cost," the Queen pressed. "You lose soldiers in every battle. How do you accept this?" Morrison spoke up. "Ma'am, with respect, we don't accept it. Every death hurts. But we understand something maybe you don't. Sometimes the only way to save lives is to risk them. We fight so others don't have to. We die so civilizations can live." The Queen was silent for a long moment. "You are terrifying," she said finally. "But I am grateful you are on our side." 3 weeks after the human fleet arrived, the swarm sent a major attack force. 300 bioships, a fleet large enough to destroy any council stronghold. The humans had been preparing. They had studied the swarm, analyzed their adaptations, developed new tactics, and they had called for reinforcements. 2 more human battle groups had arrived, bringing the total force to over 100 capital ships. "This is it," Nakamura told his command staff. "This is where we show them that Earth's children don't run." The battle lasted 6 hours. The human fleet used tactics the swarm had never encountered. They fought in 3 dimensions, using the system's asteroid field for cover and ambush points. They used nuclear-pumped lasers, weapons that could only fire once but delivered devastating energy. They used relativistic kinetic rounds that could not be dodged, because they arrived before their own light. And when the swarm adapted, the humans adapted faster. They changed weapons, changed tactics, kept the enemy off balance. They fought with a creativity born from a planet where you evolved or died. But the swarm was learning too. They started targeting human ships more effectively. They developed new warrior forms specifically designed to counter human boarding tactics. The battle became a brutal slugging match. The UESS Retribution took critical damage, her reactor breached. Her captain ordered evacuation, but stayed at his post to keep the ship's weapons firing until the last moment. He bought time for his crew to escape and took down 2 swarm ships before the Retribution exploded. In the end, the humans won. The swarm fleet was destroyed, but the cost was higher. 12 human ships lost, 2,000 casualties. The council held a memorial service for the human dead. It was the first time in their history they had honored alien warriors. Velnara spoke, her crystalline form shimmering with emotion. "We did not know your species. We called you Deathworlders with fear and disdain, but we understand now. You come from death, but you fight for life. You know violence, but you choose to protect. You are what we needed. You are what the galaxy needed." Admiral Nakamura stood before the memorial wall where every human name was inscribed. Admiral Nakamura stood before the holographic display, studying the map of swarm-controlled space. Red zones spread across dozens of systems like a disease. Behind him, the Council's Supreme Command watched nervously. "You want to attack," Strategos Telvan said. "It was not a question. The best defense is a good offense," Nakamura replied. "We've been reacting to their attacks. Time to make them react to ours." The Council representatives shifted uncomfortably. Attack? They had spent the last 6 months in full retreat. The idea of going on the offensive seemed impossible. "Admiral," Velnara said carefully, "we lack the forces for an offensive campaign. Our probability simulations show a 12% chance of success." Nakamura turned to face them. "Your simulations don't account for one thing. They don't know how humans fight wars. We don't just defend, we hunt." He activated the display, highlighting 3 systems. "These are swarm breeding grounds. We destroy these, we cut off their reinforcements. We hit them where it hurts. The casualties would be catastrophic, the Vorley strategist calculated. Yes, Nakamura agreed, but doing nothing guarantees extinction. I'll take heavy casualties over certain death. The Council reluctantly agreed. They had no choice. Without humanity's intervention, they would already be dead. The first target was Kelthera Prime, the insectoid species' homeworld. The swarm had taken it 3 months ago, converting it into a breeding facility. The Council had tried 3 rescue operations. All failed. Now it was humanity's turn. The 3rd Expeditionary Fleet under Admiral Marcus Webb jumped into the system ready for war. 50 capital ships, 200 escorts, and 30,000 Marines. What they found was hell. Kelthera Prime had been a beautiful world, covered in vast hive cities that stretched to the clouds. Now it was barely recognizable. The atmosphere was toxic green. The surface writhed with swarm biomass. Massive bioships grew from the planet like tumors. Holy God, Webb whispered. Sir, sensors detect life signs, his tactical officer reported. Kelthera survivors underground. That changed everything. This was not just a military target. There were people to save. All ships prepare for planetary assault, Webb ordered. Marines, get ready. We're going in. The fleet descended toward the planet and the swarm responded. Bioships lifted from the surface, thousands of them. The sky filled with enemy contacts. The human fleet opened fire with everything they had. The space above Kelthera Prime became a storm of weapons fire and explosions. Human ships took damage but kept pressing forward. They needed to clear a path for the Marine dropships. Launching assault pods, the UESS Indomitable reported. Hundreds of armored pods fell from orbit, burning through the toxic atmosphere. Anti-aircraft fire from swarm ground positions filled the sky. Many pods were destroyed, but many more made it through. Sergeant Morrison's pod hit the ground hard, the impact gel absorbing most of the shock. The pod's sides blew off and his squad deployed into a nightmare landscape. The ground was covered in writhing biomass. The air was poison. Enemy warrior forms were already rushing toward them. Contact! Morrison shouted, opening fire. The Marines fought with weapons designed for exactly this. Plasma rifles that could burn through swarm flesh, explosive rounds that detonated inside targets, flamethrowers that turned the enemy biomass into ash. But the swarm had numbers. For every warrior form they killed, 2 more appeared. We need air support, a squad leader called. Human fighters screamed overhead, strafing swarm positions with rockets and cannon fire. The fighters flew through conditions that should have been impossible, their pilots pulling maneuvers that would black out any council species. Morrison's squad fought their way to an underground entrance where Kelthera survivors were trapped. They placed breaching charges and blew the door open. Inside they found hundreds of Kelthera, starving and terrified. The insectoid aliens had been hiding for months, slowly dying. We're here to get you out, Morrison said through his translator. The Kelthera Queen was among the survivors. She looked at the human soldiers in their armor, covered in swarm blood, still fighting off attackers even as they organized the evacuation. You came for us, she said, disbelief in her voice. Ma'am, that's what we do, Morrison replied, shooting down another swarm warrior. Now let's get you home. The evacuation took 8 hours. 8 hours of constant fighting. The Marines held the perimeter while dropships landed and lifted survivors. They fought in rotating shifts, some sleeping for 30 minutes at a time in their armor before going back into combat. The swarm threw everything at them. Warrior forms, acid sprays, even tried to collapse the tunnels. The Marines held. When their weapons overheated, they used backup weapons. When those ran out, they used knives and bare hands. When soldiers fell wounded, their squad mates kept fighting while medics performed field surgery that would kill most species. Captain Sarah Chen was with the science team analyzing swarm biomass from orbit. She made a discovery that changed everything. Admiral Webb, she reported. I found something. The swarm has a central coordination system, a queen mind. It's buried deep in their core territories, but if we destroy it, the entire swarm loses coordination. Webb studied her data. How sure are you? 90%, sir. The swarm isn't just a collective. There's a central intelligence directing everything. Take it out and they become just animals. Webb forwarded the data to Admiral Nakamura. This could end the war, but it would require a suicide mission deep into swarm territory. On the ground, Morrison's squad was among the last to evacuate. They had held the perimeter for the entire operation, fighting off wave after wave. Now, with the last civilians safely on dropships, it was time to leave. All Marines, pull back to extraction points, the order came. Morrison's squad ran through the ruined city, swarm warriors chasing them. They reached the extraction zone just as their dropship descended. They piled in, and the ship lifted off, enemy fire following them into the sky. As they broke atmosphere, Morrison looked back at Calthera Prime. The planet was still a swarm stronghold. But they had saved thousands of lives. In orbit, the human fleet prepared to leave. They had accomplished their mission. But the cost was brutal. 40% casualties, 20 ships damaged, 4,000 Marines wounded or dead. Admiral Webb addressed the fleet. What we did today, we did because it was right. We saved people who couldn't save themselves. We held the line when it seemed impossible. That's who we are. That's what Deathworlders do. The Calthera Queen insisted on thanking every human soldier personally before they left. She moved through the medical bays, seeing humans missing limbs covered in burns, kept alive by machines and drugs that would kill her species. Why? She asked Morrison, who was being treated for a broken leg and radiation exposure. Why sacrifice so much for us? Morrison looked at her with tired eyes. Your Majesty, on Earth we have a saying. We leave no one behind. Doesn't matter if they're human or not. If someone needs help, we help. That's it. The Queen's mandibles clicked in what humans learned was an expression of deep emotion. We called you Deathworlders. We feared you. We should have called you Protectors. The victory at Calthera Prime changed the war's momentum. The Council saw that the swarm could be beaten. Other species began to hope again. But they also saw the cost. Humans bled for every meter of ground, paid in lives for every victory. Captain Chen's discovery about the Queen Mind reached the highest levels of command. Admiral Nakamura called a conference with all senior officers and council leadership. If we can reach the Queen Mind and destroy it, we end this war, he said. But it means going deep into swarm territory, maybe 40 light-years into their space. We'd be surrounded, cut off, outnumbered 100 to 1. A suicide mission, Strategos Telvan said quietly. Yes, Nakamura agreed, which is why I'm calling for volunteers. The response shocked the council. Every ship volunteered. Every single human vessel wanted to go on what was essentially a one-way trip. They're insane, one council member whispered. No, Velnara said, watching the humans with something like awe. They're committed. They understand what's at stake, and they're willing to pay any price to protect others. Nakamura selected the best ships and most experienced crews. 48 vessels, 20,000 personnel. They would be called Task Force Beowulf, named after an ancient Earth legend about a warrior who went into a monster's lair alone. Before they left, the council held a ceremony. Every species sent representatives to honor the humans who were about to sacrifice themselves. You go to save us all, the Calthera Queen said. We will remember. The galaxy will remember. Admiral Nakamura stood before his fleet.
I won't lie to you.
Most of us probably won't come back. But if we succeed, billions live. Entire civilizations survive. Our names might be forgotten, but our actions will echo forever. He paused, looking at the faces on the screens before him. Young and old, male and female, from every nation and colony Earth had ever known. All volunteers, all ready to die. Let's go kill a queen, Nakamura said. Task Force Beowulf jumped into FTL, heading toward the heart of swarm space. The council watched them go, hoping and praying to their various gods. The Deathworlders were going hunting, and nothing would stop them. Task Force Beowulf jumped into the unknown, leaving the safety of council space behind. The journey took them through regions of space that were marked as deadly on every navigation chart. They had to pass through a neutron star cluster, an area where gravity fluctuations could tear a ship apart. Navigation, how are we looking? Admiral Nakamura asked. Threading the needle, sir, Lieutenant Park replied, sweat visible on his forehead. I'm calculating micro-jumps every 30 seconds. One wrong calculation and we're atoms. The human pilots flew by instinct and calculation, making jumps that council computers said were impossible. Their reflexes, enhanced by neural implants and years of training, let them make course corrections faster than any AI. They trusted their instruments, but more importantly, they trusted themselves. 3 ships were lost in the neutron cluster, torn apart by gravitational shear. The fleet paused long enough to register their names, then continued. There was no time for mourning. Not yet. After 6 days of dangerous travel, they emerged in swarm space. What they found was horrifying. Entire systems had been consumed. Planets stripped to their cores. Moons shattered for their minerals. The void was filled with swarm bioships, thousands upon thousands of them. God in heaven, Commander Torres whispered. Captain Sarah Chen worked with her science team, analyzing every scrap of data. She had narrowed down the Queen Mine's location to a single system, deep in swarm territory. It was surrounded by 3 rings of bioship defenses, each ring containing hundreds of vessels. There's no way through, Torres said, looking at the tactical display. Then we make a way, Nakamura replied. The plan was brutal in its simplicity. The fleet would split into 3 groups. 2 groups would attack the outer defenses from opposite sides, drawing swarm forces away. The 3rd group, led by the stealth ship U.S. Prometheus with Chen and a strike team aboard, would slip through the chaos and reach the Queen Mind. It was a desperate plan. It relied on the swarm taking the bait, on the Prometheus staying hidden, on everything going exactly right. The probability of success was minimal. I've seen worse odds, Nakamura said when someone mentioned the statistics. The assault began at dawn, though dawn meant nothing in deep space. It was just a human habit, a reminder of home. The 2 attack groups hit the swarm defenses with everything they had. The space above the swarm's core worlds became a hellstorm. Human ships fired nuclear torpedoes, antimatter missiles, relativistic kinetic rounds. The swarm responded with overwhelming numbers, their bioships swarming like insects. The UESS Indomitable, veteran of a dozen battles, took point in the assault. Her captain, Marcus Webb, had volunteered to lead one of the diversionary attacks. His ship absorbed incredible damage, her armor ablating away under swarm acid attacks. But she kept firing, kept pushing forward. All power to forward weapons, Webb ordered, as his ship shook from impacts. We need to make this convincing. Convincing meant dying. The Indomitable and her escorts threw themselves at the swarm with suicidal aggression, forcing the enemy to respond in force. It worked. Swarm bioships converged on the human attackers, leaving gaps in their defensive formation. Through those gaps, silent and invisible, slipped the Prometheus. The stealth ship used every trick in the human playbook. Heat sinks to hide her engines, radar-absorbing coating, even a field that bent light around her hull. She was the product of 2 centuries of human military paranoia, designed to be absolutely invisible. Captain Chen watched from the Prometheus's cramped bridge as they glided past swarm bioships. She could see them on sensors, massive organic vessels pulsing with life. If even one detected them, it was over. Contact in 30 minutes, the pilot whispered, as if speaking too loud might give them away. Behind them, the human fleet was dying. The UESS Retribution lost primary power and began drifting, her crew still firing manual weapons. The destroyer, UESS Defiant, surrounded by swarm warriors, made a final choice. Her captain aimed her ship at a swarm command vessel and went to maximum acceleration. Ramming speed, were his last words. The impact destroyed both ships, the explosion bright enough to light up the entire battlefield. But it cleared a path for other human ships to exploit. Admiral Nakamura watched his fleet being torn apart. Every ship lost was hundreds of friends, colleagues, people he had served with for years. But he could not think about that now. If they retreated, everyone died for nothing. If they succeeded, their sacrifice saved the galaxy. All ships, maintain the attack, he ordered. We hold until Prometheus completes the mission or we're all dead. No retreat. The human fleet did not retreat. They never did. Even as ships burned, as escape pods launched, as casualties mounted into the thousands, they held the line. Because that was what Deathworlders did. The Prometheus reached the Queen Mine's location. It was not a ship. It was a structure, a massive bioconstruct that filled the entire inner system. Neural tissue stretched between asteroids, creating a network kilometers across. This was the swarm's brain, the central intelligence that coordinated their entire species. Landing team, prepare for deployment, Chen ordered. Sergeant Morrison and his squad, the same team that had held Kelthera Prime, prepared their gear. They had drilled for this mission hundreds of times. They knew the odds. They did not care. The Prometheus launched a single assault pod, then activated her engines and fled. If she stayed, she would be detected. The pod fell toward the bioconstruct, using minimal thrust to avoid detection. Inside the pod, Morrison checked his weapon for the last time. Remember, we get one shot at this. We plant the charges, we arm them, we get out. Questions? Just one, Sarge, Private Chen said. If we don't get out? Morrison smiled grimly. Then we make sure the charges go off anyway. The pod breached the bioconstruct's outer membrane. The squad deployed into an environment unlike anything they had trained for. The interior was alive, truly alive. Walls pulsed like heartbeats. The floor moved beneath their feet. The air, what there was of it, was thick with biological compounds. Move fast, Morrison ordered. We've got maybe 30 minutes before this place realizes we're here. They fought their way deeper into the structure. The bioconstruct tried to defend itself, growing warrior forms from its own tissue. But the humans had fought swarm warriors before. They knew how to kill them. 20 minutes in, they reached the core. It was a vast chamber filled with neural tissue, a brain the size of a city. Pulsing lights ran through it, signals coordinating the entire swarm across the galaxy. Captain Chen, who had come with the strike team against all military protocol, stood before it in awe. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Then she felt something, a presence in her mind. The Queen Mind was trying to communicate. It showed her images, the swarm's history, a species that evolved to consume, to spread, to survive at any cost. It showed her their purpose to cleanse the galaxy of weak civilizations, to make room for the strong. "It thinks it's doing the right thing," Chen said, horrified. "Doesn't matter," Morrison said, placing antimatter charges around the chamber. "It's killing billions. That ends now." Chen wanted to argue, wanted to find another way. But she knew there was not one. The swarm could not be reasoned with, could not be stopped except by force. She helped place the charges. "Timers set for 5 minutes," Morrison reported. "Let's move." They ran back the way they came, the bioconstruct now fully aware of their presence. It threw everything at them. Warrior forms, acid sprays, even tried to seal passages to trap them. But the Marines had trained for this. They blasted through obstacles, covered each other, moved with the efficiency of people who had fought together through hell. They reached their insertion point with 2 minutes left. The Prometheus swooped in, visible now, stealth abandoned in favor of speed. The squad jumped aboard as swarm bioships converged on their position. "Go, go, go!" Morrison shouted. The Prometheus burned hard away from the bioconstruct, her engines at maximum. Behind them, the antimatter charges detonated. The explosion was visible across the entire system, a new star born and dying in seconds. The Queen Mind died. Across the galaxy, swarm bioships suddenly stopped coordinating. They became confused, animalistic, attacking randomly or fleeing. The hive mind was gone. In the battle around the outer defenses, Admiral Nakamura saw the change immediately. They're disorganized, all ships, press the attack. The human fleet, battered and bleeding, found new strength. They pushed forward with renewed fury, destroying the now confused swarm forces. But the victory came at a terrible cost. Of the 48 ships that entered swarm space, only 14 remained, 16,000 casualties. The UESS Valiant, flagship of the fleet, had taken critical damage. Admiral Nakamura stood on his burning bridge, ordering other ships to evacuate first. "Sir, we need to abandon ship," Torres urged. "Not until everyone else is clear," Nakamura replied calmly. He stayed at his post, directing traffic, saving lives, until the Valiant's reactor went critical. He died at his station, as he always knew he would, a captain going down with his ship. When the surviving ships returned to Council space, they were greeted as heroes. But for the humans, it was a hollow victory. They had saved the galaxy, but lost half their force doing it. The war was over, but for the survivors, the battle would never end. The memorial service was held on the Council's capital world, a place humans had never been welcome before. Now, they stood as honored guests, though many wished they were anywhere else. Captain Sarah Chen, promoted to admiral after the mission, stood before the gathered representatives of 43 civilizations. She wore her dress uniform, medals she did not want pinned to her chest. Behind her, the surviving members of Task Force Beowulf stood in formation. They looked tired. They were tired. Tired of fighting, tired of losing friends, tired of being the ones who always had to make the hard choices. Ambassador Velnara spoke first, her crystalline form shimmering with emotion. We called for help and you answered. We asked for warriors and you gave us heroes. 16,000 humans died to save civilizations they had never met. There are no words sufficient to express our gratitude. The Council had created a monument in orbit of their capital. It was a massive ring structure, visible from the surface, made of materials from every Council world. Carved into its surface were names. 16,000 names, every human who died in the Swarm War. Chen read a few of them silently. Admiral Kenji Nakamura, Captain Marcus Webb, Lieutenant Sarah Park, Private First Class James Rodriguez. On, a list of people who would never go home. Why? Strategos Telvan asked during the private meeting afterward. The Vorlay commander had fought alongside humans for months. He had seen their courage, their brutality, their unwavering commitment. But he still did not understand. Why did you help us? We ignored you, called you primitives. Then we asked you to die for us and you did. Why? Shen was silent for a moment, considering the question. You called us Deathworlders like it was an insult, she finally said. But you don't understand what that means. Yes, Earth tried to kill us every day. We faced predators, diseases, disasters that should have wiped us out. We could have become paranoid, isolated, cruel. Many species would have. She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the alien city below. But we didn't. We learned that survival means working together. That strength means protecting the weak. That being hard to kill means nothing if you don't have something worth living for. Earth made us tough, but it also taught us compassion. Because when you've suffered, when you've lost everything, when you've stared death in the face, you understand the value of life. All life. The Calthera Queen approached Chen later that day. The insectoid alien moved slowly, still recovering from her months of captivity. You're Sergeant Morrison, she said. The one who led the rescue at my world. He visits our medical facilities every day. He brings gifts to our wounded. He learns our language. Why? Because he cares, Chen said simply. That's who we are. We fight like demons, but we also care like humans. The Council offered humanity full membership with unprecedented privileges, a permanent seat on the High Council, access to all technology, unrestricted trade rights, territory throughout Council space. Chen discussed the offer with her surviving officers. They met in a conference room aboard one of the few remaining human ships. They're offering us everything, Commander Torres said. We'd be equals, maybe more than equals. We'd have power throughout the galaxy. That's what worries me, Sergeant Morrison replied. The tough Marine looked uncomfortable in the political setting. We didn't fight for power. We fought because people needed help, Chen nodded. The galaxy is watching us now. They see what we can do. Some of them are grateful. Others are afraid. We need to be careful what we become. The decision was made to accept Council membership, but with conditions. Humans would share their military expertise, but would not become the galaxy's police force. They would defend the weak, but would not seek dominion over them. They would remain what they had always been, protectors, not conquerors. The integration was not easy. Council species had to adapt to human methods, and humans had to learn alien customs. But slowly, it worked. The Vorlay strategists studied human military history, learning about concepts like guerrilla warfare, combined arms tactics, and strategic deception. They were horrified and fascinated in equal measure. You fought yourselves for thousands of years, one strategist said to Chen. You developed hundreds of ways to kill each other. This should have destroyed you. It nearly did, Chen admitted. But we learned from it. Every war taught us something. Every conflict made us better at preventing the next one. By the time we reached the stars, we understood war well enough to know we didn't want it. But we also understood it well enough to win when we had no choice. The Calthera began integrating human medical technology into their own systems. Human regenerative medicine, developed to keep soldiers fighting, was adapted to save civilian lives. The techniques that could reattach limbs in combat zones now helped accident victims across the galaxy. The Zephyne established cultural exchange programs. They wanted to understand human concepts that did not translate well. Things like honor, sacrifice, brotherhood. A young Zephyne scholar spent 6 months with a human marine unit, trying to understand their bonds. "You are not related by blood," the scholar observed, "yet you call each other brother and sister. You say you would die for each other, and I believe you mean it literally. Why?" Private Chen, who had survived Kelthera Prime and the mission to destroy the Queen Mind, tried to explain. "When you go through hell with someone, when you trust them with your life and they trust you with theirs, blood doesn't matter. They become family. Simple as that." 6 months after the war ended, the Council held a summit to discuss the future. Every species sent representatives. For the first time in galactic history, humans sat among them as equals. "The swarm is gone," Velnara announced. "The remaining bioships have been destroyed or scattered. The threat is over." "This threat is over," Chen corrected gently. "But the galaxy is vast and old. There will be others." The room fell silent. They did not want to think about that. "That's why we need to change," Chen continued. "You've lived in peace for 10,000 years. That's beautiful. That's something humans have never achieved. But peace requires strength to maintain it. You need to learn to defend yourselves." "You want us to become like you?" Telvan asked. "Warriors?" "No," Chen said firmly. "I want you to become the best versions of yourselves. Learn to fight, yes, but keep your compassion. Keep your art, your culture, your love of peace. Just add the capability to defend it." Sergeant Morrison was offered a position training Council security forces. He accepted, on the condition that his squad came with him. They set up training facilities on 3 Council worlds, teaching aliens how to fight like humans. It was not easy. Council species did not have human endurance, human pain tolerance, human aggression, but they learned. They learned to think tactically, to work as teams, to push past their limits. "I'll never be as tough as you," a young Kelthera trainee told Morrison after a particularly brutal exercise. "You don't need to be," Morrison replied. "You need to be tough enough. Tough enough to protect your people. Tough enough to stand your ground when it matters. You'll get there." Captain Sarah Chen became the human ambassador to the Galactic Council. It was a role she never wanted, but someone had to bridge the 2 cultures. She spent her days in meetings, negotiating treaties, resolving disputes. It was boring compared to military service, but it was important. One day, a young human officer approached her. "Ma'am, I'm being reassigned to a joint patrol with Vorlai ships. They're nervous about having humans aboard." "Show them who we are," Chen advised. "Not just warriors. Show them we're also teachers, friends, partners. The war is over. Now we build the peace." On Earth, a new section was added to Arlington National Cemetery. Rows of white markers, each bearing a name of someone who died in the Swarm War. Families visited, leaving flowers and flags. School children learned about the Battle of Kelthera Prime, the sacrifice of Task Force Beowulf, the humans who saved the galaxy. Admiral Nakamura's daughter, now 12 years old, visited her father's grave every week. She would sit beside the marker and tell him about her day, about school, about the alien friends she had made through the exchange program. "The Kelthera Queen visited our class today," she told the marker. "She said you saved her life. She said you were the bravest person she ever met. I told her I already knew that." She placed flowers on the grave and looked up at the stars. Human ships and alien ships flew together up there now, joint patrols protecting the galaxy. Her father's dream had come true. Peace through strength, unity through shared sacrifice. "I'm going to join the fleet when I'm old enough," she told the marker. "Just like you. Someone has to protect people. Someone has to stand up when others can't." That was the legacy of the Deathworlders. Not conquest, not domination, protection. Standing between the innocent and the darkness no matter the cost. The galaxy had changed. Council species no longer saw humans as primitives from a nightmare world. They saw them as partners, teachers, friends. And yes, they still saw them as warriors. The best warriors the galaxy had ever known. But more importantly, they saw them as people who cared. Who fought not for glory or power, but because someone asked for help and they could not say no. Years later, when new threats emerged, as Chen had predicted they would, the galaxy was ready. Council species had learned to fight.